All right, hello and welcome to another Expert Insight interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine, and Coavera, formerly Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Ron Johnson, who is in the south of France. How are you doing, Ron?
I'm good, John. Nice to hear you.
Yeah, and Ron, you're a visionary retail leader, sought after speaker, board member, best known for creating the iconic Apple stores while serving as a senior executive on Steve Jobs' team at Apple. You were also instrumental in elevating Target's brand. You later founded Enjoy, the pioneering mobile retail service, and you served as CEO of JCPenney. And now you have a book coming out in September called Shop Different: How Retail Revealed Apple's Genius. And so this is like the 25th anniversary or something, is it, of the of you creating the first Apple store? Is that
Yep.
correct?
Yeah, it's a big milestone year for Apple. It's Apple's 50th
Mhm.
anniversary as a company.
Yeah.
It's 25 years since we opened our first store. It feels like yesterday to me in some ways.
Mhm.
But Apple now has stores all over the world, and the retail stores have been a very successful part of the company's strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. Why did you decide to do the book now? Because it is interesting, because you said it's been a really important part of Apple's strategy. But
Yeah.
overall, retail is going through, certainly in the US and in West, you're going through a lot of changes, and
Mhm.
and less people, less stores, less people going to stores. Why do you think the Apple story is important?
Well, I think it's important because Apple is a company that just thinks different about everything.
Right.
And we learned that from Steve.
Hmm.
And we thought different about retail. And so the retail stores were a startup within a company. We had to create a culture. We had to create a selling strategy. We had to figure out what kind of people we hire, where do we locate stores. And in today's world, innovation is so important to companies to kind of learn what made the Apple store so successful and how did they get there.
Hmm.
I thought would provide a lot of lessons for people.
Yeah, yeah, and one of the core philosophies was good things happen when people come to the store. And
Mhm.
talk to me about that. I mean, that philosophy and creating that experience. I mean, now it's an experience we
Yeah.
kind of take for granted, but I mean, once upon a time, it was quite a revolutionary experience.
It was. And, Apple's problem when we launched the stores in 2000, Apple was a highly respected brand,
Hmm.
but it had very low market share because in the personal computer, which all they had, Microsoft had won
Yeah.
the battle.
Hmm.
It had been nearly a 20-year battle, and Microsoft, going through business, had largely won.
Yeah.
And so, how does Apple compete? Well, it turned out that most people that own computers, only half of America, for example, had a computer at that time.
Hmm.
Most people got them through work. They were
Yep.
PCs at work. And Apple was going to create this great product for consumers, for real people. And so we decided to open our own stores to control the customer experience
Hmm.
and to really teach people why they might want a computer and to provide the support that if they bought one, they could learn how to use it and get help when they needed it. And
Yeah.
so we built our stores in a very different model. As people know, it was really more of an experience
Hmm.
than a transaction. And at that time, it was quite revolutionary because stores were created to buy things.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
were in the age where the internet was coming, and the internet's a very good transactional device. So we had to rethink, how do you do a store?
Hmm. Yeah, and it's been really fascinating how you managed to combine both the technology and the ease of stuff with the personal, like, outreach and the personal touch. And one of the things you emphasize is, you can't automate service. So tell me,
Mhm.
how important was it? I mean, you can set up the store, you can have the concept and stuff, but you have to have the people have to understand what is expected of them.
Yeah. No, the most important thing in the Apple store is the people.
Yeah.
Apple is a great design company. We design beautiful spaces. They get nicer all the time. I mean, they're most beautiful stores in the world. The products are easy to get access to. We have a lot of great programs in the stores, from Genius Bars to
Hmm.
theaters to training. But at the end of the day, you need people to deliver on the promise.
Hmm.
And I think the secret sauce of the Apple store is the people. I'm in the south of France today, and I had to run to our store in Nice.
Hmm.
And it was an incredible experience today. And, the amount of staff in the store, the quality of the staff, it's still quite incredible.
Hmm.
And I was at the store when we opened it 15 years ago, and I counted 15 people working today who were there at the opening.
Wow.
Now,
Wow.
think of retail. Retail's a job in a lot of places where, people turn over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was packed with people who have been enjoying that company well enough or proud enough to work for that or loving their job that they're still there.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And that's a real hard thing to do in retail.
yeah, and it's such a contrast if you think about it, as you said. I mean, there's high turnover, but now obviously with the issues that retail has had in places like this, you have where they're trying to get by with less and less and less people, so that it's the opposite experience in a lot of stores. You
Yeah,
go in, there's only a couple of people working there, they're already serving people, you're standing there, and then you're just like,
right.
why didn't I just do this online?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But it goes back to your first question that I maybe didn't answer great. I always believe good things happen when people come to stores.
Hmm.
And we wanted to find a way to get traffic.
Yeah.
And early on, we made the computers all high-speed access to the internet. This was before people had been online. And our
Hmm.
stores were like big internet cafes. And then we created programs for kids, and we let schools, anytime a teacher wanted to bring a class to the store, we let them take it over. But people like busy places. There's energy.
Yeah.
It's great for
Yeah.
employees. And so you just want to get people in the store and they start to become attached. I know you taught on
Hmm.
selling, with computers, not as much with the products like a phone. It used to take 5 visits before someone
Hmm.
would make a decision to buy. So it really was never about
Right.
trying to persuade someone who came to the store to get a computer that day. It was to move them along their understanding cycle, which is really the
Right.
sales
Right.
cycle.
Right.
And eventually, when people came in, they were ready to buy. But it was a whole team. It
Absolutely.
was a store that had to convince them to buy a Mac.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And tell me, what was the concept behind the design and the feel of the store and the layout and what was that whole concept? What were you looking
Soup,
to achieve?
really simple. Everyone who came to the store, we wanted them to talk to an employee and get their hands on a Mac.
Hmm.
So we had to get everything out of the way but the products.
Right.
And so the stores, especially then, were seen as incredibly uncluttered.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
just a series of tables with some computers sitting on them, and then packed with people in these, bright colored t-shirts that you could see,
yeah.
and Apple believes and still believes in simplicity. So people had to understand the store from the moment they walked in. So we had
Hmm.
this simple space. The front half of the store was all devoted to our products, organized by what you could do with them, how to make movies on a Mac, how to do photography, etc.
Hmm.
And the back was all about serving people,
Yeah.
a big Genius bar where we get a technical support, a theater where you'd attend classes, and it was really easy for people to understand the store. And therefore they came in. And I think almost everyone who came to the store got their hands on a product and met an employee.
Right.
And that was a good thing.
Yeah, no,
So often you go to a store, you don't talk to anybody.
you don't talk to, and perhaps you can't even get your hands on the product either.
Right, right. Well, especially back then, people forget,
Yeah.
and even today, a lot of mobile phone stores, cell phone stores, you can't try the phone.
No.
It's just sitting there to look at.
Yep.
It was a real breakthrough to load these products with software, connect them to the internet, let people try things. That was a
Yeah.
very different experience,
It
25
is.
years ago.
It is, it is. It's funny, I was
Yeah.
just thinking the last time when I went with my son, when we were deciding on his upgrade on his phone, and he was deciding between, does he want the bigger one or the small, and
Mhm.
he's a pedantic shopper at the best of times. So in the Apple store, as he's just standing there for ages, like with putting it in his pocket, taking it out, putting this one, then putting the other one in his pocket. So,
Yeah.
a lot of, and you think about it, in a lot of stores that you'd have probably had security on you immediately. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But instead, no, this is normal behavior. The person is trying to figure out whether the product fits with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really unique to the Apple store still.
Mhm.
Like today, I was getting a new iPad and I was at a table and I could sit at one table and see every iPad Pro.
Hmm.
every iPad Air,
Yeah.
the iPad. I could look at every color of the product, compare the sizes. It's just a great experience. And Apple does a really good job of thinking, really, what does the customer need? Not what do I need as a company? What does the customer need?
Yeah. And
Um,
at that time, working with obviously, as you said, working with Steve Jobs and that, and
mhm,
his whole philosophy around simplicity
mhm.
and what was that like working with him and on the concept of the store? Or did he kind of leave that to you?
No, he was very involved early on. He cared deeply about the customer experience, and he knew that these stores were going to be a big reflection of Apple.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him at one point that if the stores work, that'll be how most people, it'll be their first impression of Apple.
Yeah.
Where up until then it had been a product. Now it'd be a store. And once he understood the importance, he was very involved during the first 6 months. We worked together as we designed the store.
Mm-hmm.
Every Tuesday, he'd come over for 4 hours and sit in a warehouse, and we'd talk through, what are we going to do next? And
Yeah.
we debated everything from floors to lighting to tables to organization to what are the features and window displays. And Steve loved every detail of designing the store. He
Mm.
was a big part of it. And then once we got the first one open, he kind of left that to me to
Right.
kind of take it. And then he'd get really involved with the big stores, like the Fifth Avenue store, the Glass Cube.
Sure. Yeah.
He just loves the chance to do something like that. And so, and anytime we could get Steve's attention, things got better.
That's
He was
amazing.
a true genius,
Mm-hmm.
and he had really good opinions, and he could lead conversations that got to the core of an issue. He was a one of a kind leader and very inspiring.
So, so it's one thing. I mean, obviously, like building a store, maybe building flagship stores and having it like that. Scaling it like globally and ensuring that it maintains that level of quality and that you have the same experience if you walk into an Apple store in Seoul,
Yes.
Korea, as you would here. How difficult was the scaling of it and making sure that the uniform experience was maintained?
Well, we did. We obviously did a very good job of that. To me, it was pretty easy. I think for my teams, it was hard. Because
Right.
there's a lot of detail that goes into launching countries. But we took a really unusual point of view. At the time when we were launching our stores, everyone felt you had to micro market or tailor experiences to different customer bases.
Hmm.
So if you're going to China, what does a Chinese customer want in a retail
Right.
store? It
Hmm.
might be different from the UK, it might be different from France. But we took the attitude very simply that we want them to have an experience designed in Cupertino, just like the products.
Right.
So we said, we're going to bring an Apple experience to every country. And the only thing we'll tailor is the people, that speak the language or whatever is needed.
Mhm.
But we deliver the same experience. And so we were scaling basically the store as a product, the people we hired. It was the same from store to store, the same processes, same training. And that allowed us to have great consistency. And I remember when we opened our first international stores in Tokyo in the Ginza, a very upscale area.
Mhm.
Steve and Lorene, his wife, came to that opening. People said, the thing about Japanese people is they don't line up for store openings and they don't high five and they're very reserved.
Mhm.
Well, we opened, it was Thanksgiving weekend and there was a typhoon warning. And our line outside the store went 10 subway stops.
Wow.
It was miles long. And as they came in the store, we had developed this culture of welcome to the Apple store, and people
Yeah.
were high-fiving and they were all high-fiving and jumping up and down. It was a
Uh,
real just showed that people want to experience something when they come to the store.
yeah.
They
Yeah.
want to feel the energy of that brand. So
And
they don't want you to tailor something for them.
yeah, and isn't
They want to
conventional
engage in who you
wisdom?
are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
conventional wisdom's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
When it turns out that it wasn't, and that
Well, it
they
really, that's the interesting thing. I really think in today's world, especially with, artificial intelligence and, general knowledge being a query away, what really is unique is your inner voice.
Mhm.
Anybody can find conventional wisdom today. It's finding that true wisdom, which is right for the moment,
Yeah.
right for the time, right for the situation. And that takes an inner voice,
Yeah.
not
I
an external voice. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, and I think that's one of the dangers that we're facing into right now, and it's been going on for a
Mhm,
while, not even before AI. I mean, we have big data and all of that
mhm,
is that we're trying to kind of, diminish the concept of, as you said, is of gut instinct, of experience, of inherently,
mhm.
of things that are very, very human, of like going,
Yeah.
"Hang on a second, yeah, maybe in the normal way, that's how they operate in Japan, but no, we're going to see whether we create the right experience, they adopt ours."
Mhm.
So that kind of like thinking,
Yeah.
that seems a little bit more unique.
Well, I think any great innovation comes from someone's imagination.
Mhm,
Everything we see in the seen world, someone had the idea of we're going to create that. And then people copied at lower prices, but
mhm,
everything original comes from someone's intuition. And frequently it's a team of people. There's a vision they're trying to achieve.
yeah,
But they come out of the air. They aren't, uh, you're not going to get those through an AI query.
yeah. And
I
I think
really
that's
don't believe that.
exactly, and I think that's the dangerous thing for some people.
Mhm.
Um, and tell me, as you look back now, what are some of the leadership lessons that you took from that experience that maybe you can share with people?
Yeah, the most important thing as a leader, you got to give away leadership responsibility.
Hmm.
I really believe the most important person in a store was the one serving the customer.
Right.
And so then we had to empower them to make their own decisions and do the right thing. And they could, if someone came in with a cracked screen, they could give them a new one for free. And
Hmm.
we didn't second guess that if that was our fault.
Right.
But you've got to give away power to really create power, right?
Mhm.
And so, it's funny. I mean, I was in the Apple store in Milan 10 days ago, and they're talking about how when I worked at Apple, this employee said, I knew my store leader. My store leader knew the head of the stores who knew you, who reported to you, and you
Mm.
reported to Steve.
Right,
So I
right.
was four people from Steve Jobs. So if I had an idea, I just had to tell my store leader, and he talked once a week to his boss, who talked to me probably
Mhm.
every day. And that's how small we were, right?
Right.
And in that kind of culture, you really can give away power. You
Yeah.
don't have these large impersonal organizations that move at a snail's pace.
Mhm.
So I think one is you got to give away, you got to really pass down responsibility for leadership. You got to have super clear values, that
Mhm.
people know exactly what you stand for. What is your real mission? Steve
Yeah.
used to say, if you can't articulate your vision in 4 words or less, you haven't thought about it hard enough.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, iPod, 1,000 songs in your pocket. iPhone, we're going to reinvent the phone.
Mhm.
Our retail stores, we're going to enrich lives. We're going to
Right.
really make people better. And when you have a really clear vision, it's easy to follow, right?
Yeah.
And then so those are some of the lessons. But the other one is that there are really no limits.
Mhm.
So many people think there are limits in life.
Right.
Well, our stores started out at $10 million. When I left, we were doing $50 million a store.
Mhm.
And I remember in 2008, we had just crested 30 million and our teams were exhausted. And I said, we can't slow down.
Right.
There's another gear, there's another level, and you just got to keep imagining.
Yeah.
And I really believe in that. There are no limits. You're limited by your imagination, not
Mhm.
by some other factor.
No, and I love that idea though also of giving people the power and empowering people
Mhm,
to be, to feel then that they're really part of it and they have some
mhm,
autonomy. And I think the autonomy translates into trust, doesn't it? It means you trust
Mhm.
them, you value them as employees, and therefore
Yeah.
they feel that they have that level of importance, so they need to take
Mhm.
care of the person who walks through the door.
Yeah, and that's where most, especially in retail,
Mhm.
the best ideas are gonna come from people who are close to the customers.
Right.
And I remember our team in Minnesota one day, I went out to visit and they said, "Hey, we'd like to try something, we think we should set up everyone's product before they leave the store."
Mhm.
And I said, "Do you have time, to transfer their data and do all
Yeah.
that?" They said, "Well, we think customers really." I said, "Go ahead." And they started doing it
Mhm.
and they wanted to do that. And years later, every product is set up in the store,
Yeah. No,
but all these ideas, really come from someone serving the customer. Is there a better way? And that's why it's important to empower and to listen, you know.
mhm. And just a last question, just in the retail in general, what do you see as the future of retail? What kind of retail is going to succeed?
Yeah, well, the most misunderstood thing is that retail stores are dying.
Mhm.
People have for years, I think if you took a survey and said, are retail stores going away? A lot of people would say yes. But the reality, the internet gave a rebirth to retail. Today, 85% of all revenue comes from physical stores or their online arms, right?
Mm.
And what happened was up until 2000, when the internet took off and the dot-com boom happened, we were overstored in our country, massively overstored.
Mm.
We had 10 times the square footage of retail than other countries like in Europe, because that was the only way to grow.
Yeah.
Once the internet came and the retailers built out their online, they started to close some of their less productive stores and let people buy online for that. And
Mhm.
so there was a rationalization that happened. But today, you look at Walmart, it's never had a higher market cap. It's 8 times what it was in 2000. Well, Amazon competes with them really hard for everyday products.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
Walmart's worth a ton of money. The Gap is in a big comeback mode.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
Zara, Uniqlo, there's great stores. And so I think retail's survived and it's thriving. And I just think we are kind of social animals and we're gonna get out there and we'll buy online and sometimes we'll go to stores. But stores are a big part of the fabric of the world.
And I guess, to round it off to your point then, if you can get people to come to stores, then give them the experience that'll make them wanna come back.
Yeah, and they do come back. I mean, look at in the malls, the world evolves. Shopping malls today are filled with restaurants and activities and health clubs and workouts, just all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And people go. They're still very busy in most of the, major suburban areas and urban areas. And so I think stores are a part of our future, in many ways, omni-channel one.
Omnichannel, yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, thanks so much, Ron. All of Ron's information will be below this video. But before we go, please do remind people about you, what you do, and your upcoming book.
Yeah, the book is coming out September 22nd. It's called Shop Different: How Retail Revealed Apple's Genius. It's a really heartwarming story about the Apple stores. And, a lot of people know the store. Now they can know the story.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, listen, thanks again, Ron. As I said, all Ron's information plus the book could be below this video. And thank you for watching and listening. And I will see you all again very soon. Thank you.